All right. So real quick, one of the things that we wanted to do was before I get going with Steve Watson coming up here is talk about our e-commerce site. At ProGreen, we brought that out and started showing people our full-on e-commerce site. And anybody that signed up for e-commerce was in for a drawing that we did at 11 o'clock today. And so if you question the legitimacy of this drawing, it is on Facebook Live. It was out back. And so actually, and the guy that won it is in the room, so I wanted to offer the first iPad to Mr. Dave Hopper with Apex as he won that. Good job, Dave. You want some more? It's right here. Come on. We want a speech and everything. So if you don't know about our, good job, Dave. You're welcome. If you don't know about our e-commerce, definitely reach out to the sales guys, branch managers, and we'll show that to you. But one of our slogans this year is your time matters, and it's really based around helping you guys out in your day-to-day travels. I mean, as everybody knows, it's hard to drive around this city, with the traffic and everything. So using e-commerce, working on your order pads, things like that we built. We've been spending about 1.5 years working on this site. I know our competitors have had an e-commerce site out, but you need to check ours out. We waited, we made it better, more robust, and it's there for you guys late at night to price out jobs, to load up in your sheets, your product order forms will be there to use that. So anyway, we will definitely stop by, do a demo for you, get you signed up, and for everybody that signs up from now to Spring Fling, we're giving away another iPad for it. So another drawing during Spring Fling. So you can go to our website, CPS Distributors, and log on there, and it'll take you to the e-commerce site. Okay. So I got to introduce Steve Watson here. Steve is the underdog, and to the top dog, the unreasonable way. There is an unreasonable way to success, and this unreasonable way to success is not the ordinary way. It's not the traditional way. It's not the way that your mom or dad told you how to be successful, but it is a way to be successful when the normal way of success is not available to you. In this talk, Underdog, the Top Dog, you will learn 3 different tools: the right self-image, the right mindset, and unreasonable training to help you get to any goal in your personal and professional life. Our speaker, Steve Watson, former All-Pro wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. Here he is. Thank you.
And this is a critical drive for them, man, because if they can get out of this hole, they won't give San Diego field position. Last time they didn't have excellent field position, ran it in for a touchdown, so who knows?
Wade Manning brought it back to the 5-yard line, returning a punt from his end zone. Morton, quick timing, patted out the front, goes to Watson. Goodbye, and let's take him, get him. Lyndon King is in pursuit, but he'll not catch him, and Watson's going to take it the distance. Denver touchdown. Oh, baby.
Oh, before we start, center of your table, underneath the display there in the center of the table, are some call sheets. And the call sheets, they are from the Super Bowl 50 season. It is an actual call sheet. I had coached with the Denver Broncos for about 8 years with Shanahan, and that is a call sheet. And you'll see when we get to it, it will give you a chance to look at, that is exactly what they have on the sideline. In fact, it is one. And as you look at it, and the next time you start to bellyache and moan about the call that they make, take a look at that. And you'll say, hey, you have no idea what they have to go through. I mean, it's an amazing thing, but we're going to get to that, so just hang on. Underdog, long shot, undrafted, free agent, walk-on. That was me. Can't get any lower down there. I wasn't a sure thing. If you're into acronyms, anybody into acronyms? It's undrafted, UDFA, underdog for adoption. That's pretty much the way I look at it. And it means you weren't picked initially, but somebody saw something special in you and they picked you later. That was me. They had to want me more than I wanted them. They had come back to check me out again. There wasn't anything I could do to prepare. There aren't that many opportunities out there, and age is always a factor. You get too old, and they stop knocking at your door. And there's no guarantee that they're going to keep you. Isn't that right? But that day, February 14th, 1958, I was selected as a first-round draft choice. That's got you thinking, huh? My new parents came to adopt me and picked me up from the adoption center. Different free agent, huh? It was the start of something special. My dad, he became my friend, my coach, my teacher, my mentor. And he pushed me to challenge life. He was always introducing me to new challenges, and he was always helping me to set the bar higher all the time. I was always being taken outside my comfort zone. I can remember my dad, and he just drove me. I can remember him saying, "Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to try." That's as far as I can jump. That was me, jumping outside my comfort zone. I'll bet you everybody in this room is guilty of being afraid to do something. You had a great opportunity at one point in your life to do something really special. And you think back on that and you think, I wish I had done it. You were afraid to jump outside your comfort zone. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today is my dad took me outside my comfort zone every day. I mean, he was always challenging me with new experiences. Anybody in here ever getting to sit in the front seat of a roller coaster? Anybody? Do you remember that initial climb and the anticipation of what was to come? That's what I'm talking about. Don't take a back seat. Sit in the front seat. Don't be afraid to try. That's the key to the whole thing. Are your opportunities for success avoiding you, or do they turn around and bump right into you? Today, we're going to talk about being prepared to take advantage when opportunity does come knocking. And I will show you how to develop that mindset, because I had it. It's not what you say out of your mouth that determines your life. It's what you whisper to yourself that has the most power. Think about that. Inner talk. Success has to start with you. You need to believe you're the right person. You need to have the right self-image. See, the problem with being an underdog is that, and all of us are underdogs. I mean, at one point in your life, you've been an underdog. I know there's some people that would sit out there and say, what's he talking about? I was never an underdog. Prove it. Everybody is one at some point in your life. The problem with being an underdog is that because other people may not believe in you, you might not believe in you. And it can be real easy to think that you can't do it. And if you think you can't do it, well, then you can't. Henry Ford had a great quote. He said, whether or not you think you can, you're right. Took me a while to figure that one out. But when you really think about it, what a profound comment. Dr. Jason Selk, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him, he's one of the premier performance coaches in the entire world. He's trained Fortune 500 executives and Olympic athletes, and he's trained them how to be mentally tough. He was named, if you can believe this, what a job I'd like to have. He was named the director of mental training for the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team. And he helped them to win, and they give him credit. He helped them to win 2 World Series championships in 6 years. They had quite a run. And everybody on that team, you read all the interviews, they'll tell you it was because of developing that mental toughness. In his book, Executive Toughness, he writes about how you're going to act like the kind of person that you think you are. He says you won't outperform or underperform your self-image, at least not for long. You're going to live out who you think you are, and you're going to achieve what you think you can achieve. So my first underdog principle is you need to believe that you're the right person for the job. You need to have the right self-image. Our self-image, in case you don't, that's your picture of you. That's what you think of you. Your self-image is internally constructed. You've had a lot of outside influences, but you still decide how you view yourself. You catch yourself in the mirror in the morning talking to yourself, that's that self-talk. Make sure it's positive. Self-communication, what you say to yourself, is the strongest determinant of self-image management. But unfortunately, most of our inner dialogue, that self-talk, is negative. It's about what we can't do. And if you're always telling yourself that you can't, well, then you can't. So you need to take control of your self-communication and start telling yourself that you can. You need to consistently tell yourself the right message about yourself. I always believed I could, even if the evidence suggested otherwise. And I had some long odds, let me tell you. And let me give you an example. Of all the high school football players in the United States, only 6.5% of them will go on to play NCAA college football. Of the precious few that go on to play NCAA college football, only 1.5% of them will go on to play in the NFL. Wow. You talk about some serious astronomical odds. It's a good thing I didn't know. Now, jokingly, I did that, but to make a point, there's some real seriousness to that comment of what I just said. Not knowing can be your greatest asset if you use it to your advantage. Mark Twain said, remember old Mark Twain? He always comes up, but he said, all you need in this life is ignorance and confidence, and success is sure. How about that? Well, I had plenty of ignorance. There was no doubt about that. And I had confidence. I believed. And the reason I believed is because I adhered to a phrase that, and you hear it all the time, but people don't say it much anymore in our life now, but sorry guys. The phrase that my dad hammered into my head, and he must not have hammered it very well, was don't read the clippings. In other words, don't read and listen to what people are writing and saying about you. And it doesn't mean just pro athletes and the media and all that. It's everybody around you. Stay focused on the finish and ignore the distractions. That's the biggest key. And I'll tell you, there's another quote that goes along with it. Ignorance is bliss, but knowledge is misery. Have you ever heard that one? Now, knowledge is misery, you kind of use that in the context of what we're talking about. It's not bad to be smart. I think that's pretty good. But you have to sit down and think, and I thought to myself, what if I knew what the astronomical odds were? Would I have approached my run to play for the Broncos the same way? I was better off being ignorant. I really was. I was better off that I didn't know. So I ask you, how did I make it into the NFL? I thought I could. As simple as that sounds, that's right where it started. I thought I could. And I think as kids, you all think you can. My dad kind of doubled down on that, and you'll hear more about that. But when I was in high school and none of the big football powers were recruiting me, I still believed that I'd play in the NFL. I'll give you a great example. Army recruited me to their West Point campus. They gave me a vice presidential nomination to go to school there and play football for them. Wow, I mean, that's big time. I knew that I couldn't accept. I can remember that day when I called them up and I said, hey, I can't do that. You guys require a 5-year military commitment after graduation. And I'm going to be playing in the NFL, so I'm sorry, I can't come there. I mean, talk about belief. But that was the way it was with my dad. I mean, he kept pushing me and pushing me. Problem was, 4 years later, no NFL team drafted me. So then you sit there and you go, okay, I still believed that I would play in the NFL. Now you're looking at me and you're going, now you got to scratch his head a little bit. My dad was the first big influencer and difference maker in my life. I mean, he really jumped in and he would help me. He was always introducing me to new challenges. He was always helping me to raise the bar higher. And I think that's the key. We never stopped. I mean, I was outside my comfort zone almost every day. I played up. Everybody familiar with that expression? I played up against older competition my entire life. And I'll tell you, I've got a great example for you. When I was 12 years old, my dad entered me in the World Skeet Shooting Championship. Everybody familiar with skeet, trap and skeet? You shoot the little clay targets. For 2 years before that, unbeknownst to me, my dad, every summer for 2 years, he would take Mom and me and we would travel around in the summertime and we would go to these different skeet shooting events. And I always shot against men. Never shot against kids. When he entered me in the World Skeet Shooting Championship, he entered me in my age group, the sub-junior class. I remember standing there that day. They were explaining the rules to how this thing was going to work. And all these kids are standing around me. And I was really tall for my age, and they were all about up to here. And I remember looking at them and going, I just have to beat them? Oh, piece of cake. And I really felt that way because I looked at them and I thought, they weren't men, so all I had to do was beat kids. It's a mindset. At the end of the day, this other kid and I were tied for the lead, 99 out of 100 targets. We had a shoot-off. They flipped a coin. The other kid won the coin toss, and he elected to go first. Didn't bother me. He got up, he missed. I got up, bang. I was the new world champion, the sub-junior world champion for skeet shooting. It was amazing what we did. As I said earlier, going outside your comfort zone, I mean, that's about how far it is. Don't be afraid to try different things. Now, taking it to another level, what sets those who accomplish great things apart from those who fail to realize their goals. I thought all kinds of different things. Intelligence, an appetite for risk, creativity, talent, all these different things. And the simple thing is, the best prediction of success is mindset. Mindset. I mean, it's so simple. And mindset really is those who achieve great things generally believe that they can improve and grow as people. It's that simple. Improve and grow as people. There are two different mindsets, and you may have heard of them. There's the fixed mindset, and there's the growth mindset. You know, the psychologist, Carol Dweck. The fixed mindset means you got some talent here, and you got intelligence over here, and it's not going to get any better. You only have so much of each, and it can't get better. It won't improve. The growth mindset says, I can improve my whole life. I can continue to get better. Well, that's what I'm going to tell you about today. I'm going to tell you about the growth mindset on steroids. There was only one mindset for me, and it was, I'm going to the NFL, and I'll show you. When you're always playing up against older competition, you get beat up mentally and physically. And you start to develop that I'll show you chip on your shoulder. Everybody remember, was it Robert Conrad having the battery on his shoulder? When you develop that chip on your shoulder, it changes the way you look at things. I had that I'll show you mindset in everything that I did. When I was about to graduate from high school, I only had 4 schools show any interest in me for football. It was the University of Delaware, Duke University, Army, who I just told you about, and Temple University out of Philadelphia. Not a football power, any of them. But the reason I found out that nobody wanted to pick me was because everybody thought I was too slow. Oh, hey, did you see that video clip? Hey, the guy almost caught me. I can remember when I was out on the golf course. It was recruiting season. It was my senior year. We're out on the golf course, and the football coach for the University of Delaware, he was playing down the other fairway, and my buddies and I were playing up the other fairway. And I remember, like it was yesterday, you don't forget things like this. He's riding down there, and he looks over at me, and this is a guy that's recruiting me. And he looks at me, and he goes, "Hey, Tom, how you doing?" Well, first of all, I was flattered that he would think. It confused me for Tom Watson, the golfer. I wish I had his handicap. But my name is Steve, and this guy was supposed to be recruiting me. He's supposed to want me to come to his school. I knew at that point, I'm not going to Delaware. I'll show you. I'll show you mindset. Duke University invited me down for a weekend visit. At the end of the weekend, I'm sitting there across the desk from the head coach. He looks at me and he goes, "Steve, we'd love to have you come to Duke University, go to school here and play some football. We're just not sure about your speed. Would you mind running a 40-yard dash for us before you leave?" As a young guy, I can remember I blurted. It was blurting. I blurted out, "Coach, isn't that illegal?" He looks at me and he fired right back. He goes, "Steve, I'll tell you what. Better yet, you go back to your school. Have your coach time you. And you send that time down to me." Lip service. I knew that no coach is going to trust somebody else sending him a time. It's going to be a doctored up situation. So it's really lip service there. But then at the same time, I realized that this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as his character. And I knew I'm not going there, and I'll show you. Army, I already told you about. And then there's Temple University. They had this great coach, Wayne Harden. one of the best coaches in college football, just recently inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. I looked his background up and I realized I'm going to stay close to this guy. I'm going to Temple. And I looked at their schedule. They were going to play all the big schools that didn't recruit me, that I wanted to go to. Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia, Syracuse, Boston College. They're going to play them all. And I knew, I'm sitting there thinking, they're going to schedule Temple as their homecoming game. And I'm going to get to play in their stadium against them and in front of their fans, and I'm going to score touchdowns. I'll show you. I'm going to Temple. Well, when I was about to graduate from college, my illustrious fight to get into the NFL, only one NFL team expressed any interest in me. You got the combine going on right now. And I've been to the combine about 8 times as a coach. And I can tell you, it's like a roll of the dice. In my day, I had as much of a chance in what happened to me as they have today, because it's like going to Vegas. I can remember, and I heard it from the horse's mouth, it was the Denver Broncos and their quarterback coach, Babe Pirelli. Anybody remember that name? One of the great quarterbacks in the game. Babe was the quarterback coach for the Denver Broncos. And Babe, from the horse's mouth, told me, he said, nobody on our staff, nobody on the offensive side, nobody on the defensive side wanted anything to do with you. They all said, he can't play in the NFL. Babe stood up in that meeting, and I heard this from my receiver coach. He said, Babe stood up, and he was the only one. He stood up and looked at all of us and said, you're wrong. This kid's got something, and I'm going to go check it out. They said, go. Babe flew into Philadelphia immediately after that, and it was a rainy day. I remember like it was raining cats and dogs. Real lousy day out. I get a phone call up in my dormitory room, and they told me, get down here, quick. Coach Pirelli from the Denver Broncos is here to work you out. I go, okay, man, I got to hustle. Threw everything on. I run down the middle of Broad Street, and I mean, I was flying, probably fastest I've ever run. And I come running into the athletic building. Coach Pirelli introduces himself, and he says, Stevie, want to work you out today. He said, but a little rainy outside. He says, is there a nice long hallway here somewhere that we can run a 40-yard dash? I said, a 40-yard dash? I said, no, maybe downstairs, Coach. And he takes me down. Now, we go down the steps. He got right to the bottom of the steps, and he looked down the hallway, and when he hit that last step, he goes, perfect. I'm thinking, what did he see? Coach Pirelli was standing there, and he looks down at the floor, and it's a tile floor, if you can get that. He says, that'll be your line right there. You start right there, it'll be on your movement. Let me walk down here. He says, these look like 1-foot tiles, let me pace it off. And he starts kind of weaving down the hallway. He grabs these 2 girls, says, honey, you watch this door, you watch that door. Don't let anybody come in this hallway. This young man's going to run for me, and I don't want him to get hurt. He gets down the other end. Coach Pirelli holds his hand up, and he goes, on you, Stevie. I run by him, and I wheel around, and I go, what was my time, Coach? And he goes, don't worry about it. It's not important. I said, Coach, this is my future. I said, it is important. He goes, don't worry about it. He said, come on, let's go upstairs. I want to throw some balls to you. He was a really good quarterback, and he could still spin it pretty good. So he says, let's go upstairs. I want to throw the ball to you, see you get in and out of your breaks. I want to see you catch the football. I thought, okay. At that point, in my head, I'm going, this is it. This is my one tryout. I got to sell out. At the end of the day, my knees were bleeding, my elbows were bleeding. I dove into the bleachers to catch one of his wide passes, and I had a big bump on my head from hitting the bleachers. Amazing. But when he was about to leave that day, Coach Pirelli looked at me and he goes, Stevie, stay close to the phone on draft day. we've got a pick in the 3rd round. You never know what's going to happen. Stop you right there. Guys especially, have you ever been in that spot where you heard what you wanted to hear? Have you ever been there? It wasn't really what anybody said, but it was what you wanted to hear. I heard him say, Stevie, stay close to the phone on draft day. We've got a pick in the 3rd round. We're going to take you. That's what I heard. It wasn't a few minutes after that, Coach Pirelli went out the front door. I went out the side door, and I went up the street, and I was on the run. I had to get to my dad. I had to get to the phone. I had to call my dad, my coach, my teacher, my mentor. I got to the phone. I call him, and I'm like, Dad, you're not going to believe this. The Denver Broncos are going to draft me in the 3rd round. We got to do something. I can't work out with the football team anymore. Dad, you got any ideas? Dad, what can I... Slow down. He finally slowed me down. He said, Steve Reno, I'll tell you what. Ask the track coach if you can train with the sprinters. Where did that come from? So I asked the track coach. And I said, can I train with your sprinters? And he said, sure. He says, I believe that you did the long jump and the triple jump in high school, so if you do that for me, I'll let you train with my sprinters. I'm not going to let you run in any events, but you can train with them. Nobody wants to be on the track team, trust me. So I trained with the sprinters, and it got me in great shape. And when the track season was over, so was the semester. And I can remember everybody was gone. And 10 days away from Denver Broncos minicamp, and I'm sitting there, and my mindset is, I'm going to get drafted. Now, I'll tell you what, when you have that mindset and you think you are, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And I remember going down to the athletic building. Our track coach, our sprint coach was down there. Our sprint coach was a guy named Edwin Roberts. He won a bronze medal, 2 bronze medals for Trinidad in the 1964 Olympics, in the 200 meters and the mile relay. Great sprinter. I'll never forget, Edwin said, I will train you. I will take care of you. We will get you, we will fine tune. I mean, he couldn't speak a lot of English. And I can remember, he was telling me, he said, hand placement, foot placement, body lean. And he had me ready. It was amazing. And then it was here. The 1979 NFL Draft. Takes you back a few years, tells you how old I am. 1979, there was no TV. We didn't have ESPN to televise it. They just called you on the phone. I didn't get a phone call. I was ticked. It was 2 days, 12 rounds, 330 players were selected, and I wasn't one of them. I was mad. They were supposed to pick me. I can remember, I got on the phone and I called my agent. I said, Tony, what's going on? And he goes, boss, we've got 6 free agent contract offers. He's not privy to my conversation with Coach Pirelli. And I said, well, you mean walk on? And he goes, yeah. And I said, who are they? And he goes, New York Jets, New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, Baltimore Colts, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Denver Broncos. Which one, boss? And I said, well, the Denver Broncos, of course. And he goes, why? And I said, because they didn't pick me. They were wrong. They were wrong, and I want them to know it. I'll show you. That's that I'll show you mentality on steroids. Tony said, time out, boss. He always called me that. He said, first of all, I want to tell you, you weren't on anybody's draft board. In fact, you weren't in anybody's thought process. The only reason that the Denver Broncos or any of those teams had any interest in you was because of my relationship with the general managers. They were doing me a favor. by allowing you to walk on into their training camp. That's it. They didn't want you, but they were doing me a favor. Boy, talk about drive the nail even lower. Wow, they didn't want you? I mean, that hits home. Well, that first day of minicamp for the Denver Broncos, I remember that. I'll tell you what. Height and weight. They measure you, they weigh you, and then you run. And it's always that way. Every camp. And then you start to get into the nitty-gritty of football. I remember standing there, height, the guy hit me in the back, and he said, stand up. He said, 6 feet 4 inches. Then he said, get on that scale. Get on the scale. And he goes, stand up straight. They were tough. 180 pounds. Just in case. I weigh about 200 pounds now, and I was 20 pounds lighter. Then it was time to run. And I'll never forget that. We went over there, and it was my turn to run. And it was on my movement, just like we talked about. I remember getting down in this stance. Edwin, our track coach, he had me ready. Everything felt so good. And I'll never forget hand placement, foot placement. I was ready, body lean. Start. I felt so smooth and so relaxed coming out of my stance. I ran by the timer, and I wheeled around, and I looked back. It's Craig Morton. Craig Morton's talking to my timer. I wonder what he's saying. And Morton was standing there, and it was like this. The timer was showing him the watch, and the timer goes, as if to say, you got me. Craig Morton turned and looked back at me. He walked over, stuck his hand out, and he said, hi, I'm Craig Morton. Nice job. For the rest of minicamp, every time Craig was up, he'd look over at me, and he'd say, Watson, get in the front of the line. And I'd get in the front of the line, starting to tick some guys off. That day, I ran the fastest 40-yard dash in the entire camp. I'd never run that fast again in my life. That's true. Never had to. They never asked me to run again. And it was all because of that unreasonable training that I did. And I call it unreasonable because when you try to get on the track team just so that you can be on the football team, that's unreasonable. The biggest lesson there, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. That day, when I ran that 40-yard dash, it became indelible in the minds of those coaches. They never looked at me again as if I was slow. It's amazing. From then on, it was, okay, let's make him into a wide receiver. He's not slow. One time, and I'd never run that fast in my entire life. So you really have to ask yourself, what could you do? I mean, if you're missing in something in your life, and you want to get there, but you just haven't figured out how, take that unreasonable path. Sometimes you have to go where everybody else isn't going to be able to get to that goal that you want to get to. I called it unreasonable training, when the regular path to success isn't available to you. You take the unreasonable path. Successful people set unreasonable goals, and they train in unreasonable ways to reach those goals, with unreasonable meaning, not the way everybody else is doing it. And I took that. Wait till you hear some of the stuff that I was doing. You aren't going to believe it. I made the Broncos that first year, but I didn't play very much. In fact, I hardly played at all. So I was ticked off. I thought, and once you're in there, you look around you and you go, I'm as good as him. I'm as good as him. How come I'm not on the field? I never opened my mouth. I just called my dad. I said, Dad, what am I going to do? I still can't get on the field. I heard him take that deep breath again. Steve Areno. And he gave me the most unreasonable suggestion you have ever heard. You're not going to believe this one. Steve Areno, go back to school, finish your degree, and run on the track team. Dad, what are you thinking? Dad, I'm a pro football player. You think I'm going to go sit in class with these kids? Kids. My dad said again, Steve Areno, go back to school, finish your degree, run on the track team because you have a year of eligibility left, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I went back to school and re-enrolled at Temple University. I took 16 credit hours as a full-time student, and I signed up to live in a dormitory. You're probably thinking, that's a little over the top to live in a dormitory. But I was still an underdog. Underdogs had to do the right thing. I had to train, not try. You see, trying, and listen to this, trying is when I attempt to do something that I probably can't do. Training is when I do what I can do today so that I can do tomorrow what I couldn't do today. I'll repeat that. Training is when I do what I can do today so that I can do tomorrow what I couldn't do today. So I got back on the track team, and I got me in better shape than ever, and I was even better prepared for my second year in the league. I've talked to you about all these unreasonable things that I'm going to tell you about. Have you ever had something in your life and you looked at it and you thought, I don't really want to do this, man. But you know that if you do it, it's going to help you get to your goal. But you really don't want to do it. It's one of those things where it's almost way outside your comfort zone, and you procrastinate forever on it, and you don't do it, or you don't do it in time. I was a jumper. The only reason I was on the track team was because I could jump, and I couldn't jump that far. I think he was just taking care of me. Nobody wants to be on the track team. Our coach took us to the Penn Relays one year. The Penn Relays are it's a world-class event with world-class sprinters, and I mean super speed. It's people from all over the world come into this event. We're standing there, and our coach was a stickler for being a team. Stick together. He said, everybody be there. I don't care if you're a jumper, runner, thrower, whatever you are. You have your uniform and you have your cleats. You be dressed and you be ready to go in case I need you. He turned to me and he says, Stevie, need your help today. One of our guys can't go. And I said, sure, Coach. What do you need? Need you to run a quarter mile relay. I go, Coach, he goes, don't worry about it. We're going to put you at the anchor. It's going to be okay. I go, but stop. Our first 3 guys are going to get you a huge lead. You're going to be all by yourself. It'll be no problem. Trust me. I looked at him and I go, okay, Coach, sounds like a plan. I remember about that time, photographer, the paparazzi guys, they're all, and this was a world-class event. They're all sitting here and they're taking pictures of this guy sitting down in the infield. And he's stretching, getting himself ready. It's Ronaldo Nehemiah, the reigning world champion, world record holder in 110-meter high hurdles. one of the fastest human beings on the planet. And he was the anchor leg for the University of Maryland in my race. Wow. Never forget that. I remember standing there, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, it was just like Coach said. Man, when I got the baton, there was nobody around. It seemed like I couldn't lose. And I took off running, and I got around the first curve, then the second curve, and then I heard it. What nobody on the track wants to hear. The sound of the crowd cheering for a world champion who was about to run by a much slower guy. And you could hear the crowd. You know that sound. Oh. And I could hear his feet. And I just remember, and you know what happens then. Then you tighten up, and then you start leaning back, and you start looking like you don't even belong on the track, which I didn't. He went by me. But I caught him while he was putting his sweats on. Now, it may seem like a bad thing that I didn't win that race. But that day and that training, that unreasonable training, it allowed me to get to my goal. I didn't really want to do that, but I got to my goal because it allowed me to run that 40-yard dash and make the Denver Broncos football team. It may not be something you want to do, but you got to think about it and think, is it going to help you get to your goal? It's always something in the back of the mind. Unreasonable training, and I'll tell you, this is where it gets really crazy. Unreasonable training requires great preparation. I have always believed through my whole life that if you're prepared, then the tough stuff is easy. And we'll go through something here shortly that'll help exemplify that. General George Patton, one of the great leaders of our time, was a firm believer in what he called the relentless pursuit of improvement. Improvement in preparation is essential. He had a battle cry. And if you ever read stuff about that, his battle cry was, improve or die. He commanded one of the greatest armies in the history of the world. John Wooden, known for his intensity and his focus in practice, they asked him when he retired, what are you going to miss most? Practice. He was a stickler for practice. He said, consistently winning in competition means consistently winning in preparation. He believed that perfection was not the key, improvement was. So it didn't matter about being perfect. He would always refer to competitive greatness, which meant being able to be at your very best when your very best is needed. Competitive greatness, preparation. I mean, I love the way that sounds, to be at your best when your best is needed. So I want to talk to you a little bit now about how I trained in a different way for my one opportunity. And I'm telling you, you get one opportunity in this life. And some of you may have had it, and you look back and you regret. Some of you may have not even gotten there yet. But the last thing you want to do is have regrets and look back and think to yourself, man, why didn't I? I hope something that I say today makes a little bit of sense, that you can at least prepare yourself for some of the things. And until you're dead and you're in the ground, you always have a chance. It's the way I look at it. When my second season was over, I still couldn't get on the field. And I knew that I was as good as anybody on that team. After that season was over, my second year, I went to my receiver coach, Fran Polsfoot. And I remember going to him, and he's an old school guy. I remember going up to him and I said, Coach Polsfoot, I got to ask you a question. I can't get on the field. What in the world do I have to? And I didn't get it out of my mouth. And he goes, karate, Stevie, karate. I said, what do I have to do to get on the field? He goes, karate. I said, okay. He goes, you're stiff. You got no flexibility. And it'll help you at the line of scrimmage against the elite corners of the NFL in bump and run coverage. Wax on, wax off. Not really. Gotcha. Amazingly enough, there's more truth to wax on, wax off than you think. So I looked at him and I thought, okay, I can do that. So I took karate. Did I want to be a black belt? No. But karate was training for getting in NFL games, so that's what I did. Then I stepped back, and when somebody says something like that to you, you step back, because this is your life. I stepped back, looked in the mirror, and I thought, okay, what do I need to improve? Well, I was left-hand dominant. Every time that I would break in on the right side, Elway's ball would kill me. I mean, he'd throw that slant route, and it would just about, you always hear about the Elway cross. Well, he'd stick it on you, and I'm telling you, he did it, I think he did it for sport. And he'd hit you with that thing, and my right hand was so weak. I remember going to my dad, my coach, my teacher, my mentor again. And I said, hey, got any ideas for this, me improving my right hand? And he goes, sleight of hand. I said, sleight of hand? You mean coin and card tricks? He goes, yeah. I said, well, what's that going to do for me? And he goes, it's supposed to develop dexterity and flexibility in the hands. So I started doing it with both of my hands and working with the cards, working with the coins. I actually got pretty good at it back then. Did I want to be a magician? No. But it was training for getting into NFL games. So I thought, hey, I'll take a shot at it. In my relentless pursuit of improvement, I found out, as when you look back and you try to evaluate yourself, I said, okay, what else? And I wasn't catching enough footballs. And I think the current team probably isn't catching enough of them. But I knew that to be a great wide receiver, I had to catch more footballs. I had to have more touches on the ball. What happened is every time I would go down to the practice field, you'd have 2 to 3 quarterbacks down there, and you'd have 20 to 25 guys trying to get the ball thrown to them. Now, you don't get many repetitions when you have 3 quarterbacks and 25 receivers. So I knew that I can't do this. I got to catch more balls. I need more work. And I remember calling my friend, Raymond Berry, the Hall of Fame wide receiver from the old Baltimore Colts. Raymond looks at me and he goes, or he said to me, I said, so what should I do? And he goes, buy yourself a quarterback. I said, buy myself a quarterback? Yeah, the cheap kind. And I said, what do you mean, the cheap quarterback? There isn't such a thing. He goes, a ball machine, son. Get yourself a ball machine. He said that ball machine will shoot the ball to you with the accuracy and the speed of a pro quarterback. He says, you go get yourself a bag of balls. He says, and anybody can shoot them to you. So you have them shoot the balls to you. He says, and you never want to catch the ball the same way in any time. He said, the way you're going to train is that you never want to be surprised by how the ball comes to you. He said, you want to train those muscles to act like they've been there before. Wow. See, doesn't take much for me to start thinking. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, when he told me that. So then I bought a bag of balls, I bought a ball machine, and I had my wife stand out there. My wife shot them to me. She also shot them at me. I will tell you, and it was amazing, and this is a true story, we had an argument. And this is no lie. She looked at me and she goes, do you think maybe we could take this outside to the ball machine? I'm like, Come on, hon, give me a break. Great marriage tool. You want to ever be on the good side of your wife. But that was the takeaway from the ball machine. And then the last thing that I did was visualization. I always felt that if you could see it, you could believe that it would happen. Seeing is believing. You never want to be surprised by what you see on the field. Raymond Berry had the same approach from visualization. He used to take the play-by-play. Play-by-play from the games. And in the summertime, he would go out there on the field by himself, and he'd pretend he was in the huddle, and he'd have the play-by-play for the game sitting right there, and he would read the play, pretend the quarterback called it, run to the line of scrimmage, run it downfield, work on the technique on whoever he was in his mind visualizing. And it was an unbelievable thing. Two things that it gave you a chance to do. It gave you a chance to never be surprised by what you see on the field. I took it to another level, and I had adopted that for my summertime. And then during the season, I would go to the game 4, maybe 5 hours ahead of time for the rest of my career. And I laid down on the floor in the locker room, and I threw the towel over my face, and I would go through the whole game plan in my head, and I would feel everything. How many watched the Winter Olympics? The skiers, the downhillers, those guys, you see them in the gate, you see them. They're playing the game before they play the game. I actually noticed this for the first time were the figure skaters. The girl coming across the lobby, and I knew she wasn't just la-la dancing around, but all of a sudden you realize she's going through her whole routine while walking through past the camera. She's not even on the ice. Visualization. What an unbelievable tool. Play the game before you play the game. Now, the fun part. It's always fun when preparation meets opportunity. Imagine yourself. Have you ever been with your backs to the wall with no foreseeable way out? It's you against the world, or so you thought. The odds are stacked against you before you even start. Everybody's saying, you can't. You'll never get out alive. Maybe not quite, but it felt like it. Then you snap into it and you go, I've got help. And it's some pretty good help at that. Then you take that deep breath. This is what I've been training for. Then you say to yourself, I can't let these guys down. I can't let them down. As we stood there, waiting for our leader to return, the wind whipped across the field, coming off Lake Erie. It was minus 5 degrees. Snow flurries, off and on. Muddy field. We were backed up on our own 2-yard line. The Cleveland Browns had just scored. It's 20-13. It was 20-13. 5 minutes and 43 seconds on the clock. The huddle was quiet as we waited for Elway to return. We looked at the Cleveland Browns over there in their huddle. They're smiling, they're laughing, like they had this thing in the bag. Our huddle needed something.
The drive had narrowed to a trail of dog bones that led the Broncos into Cleveland's scary municipal stadium. The Broncos had lost. The Browns had won. It seemed just that simple. And Whatever hopes Denver had of a comeback seemed to vanish on the following kickoff. And the Broncos are 98 yards away from where they need to go. Still 5 minutes to go, but they need something out of this drive.
It was kind of a nervous feeling, knowing, what was at stake. And we're just all standing in the huddle, and there was a timeout, and you look out the back of the end zone, and all the cameras and photographers and everybody was aimed right in our huddle.
Bronco guard Keith Bishop.
I just said to the other offensive linemen, the people in the huddle, we had them right where we wanted them.
Like, oh man, we got to go 98 yards. This is it. This could be the end of the season after coming so far. And he comes up with something like that.
Almost everybody finds themselves with your back to the wall at some point in your life. Whether it's your business, your family, relationship, or your health. Everybody, at some point, you end up in that situation. When that happens, fear, anxiety, they all creep in. And then your brain starts to panic, and you start to shut your body down. And there's only one thing that can circumvent that, one thing that can help you, and it's preparation. I think everybody at some point in their lives has been with your back to the wall, but you've also been on the clock. Does the clock control your life? The clock is a complex instrument that measures the passing of time. It tells us what time it is in the immediate present. It does not predict how much time we have left. It does not give us time, and it cannot create time. It just measures time. In our society, the clock is an instrument of pressure and stress. Isn't that true? I think we'll all agree. It reminds us of how much time we no longer have. It controls when we get up, how fast we live our lives, how hard we push, how long our day is, how fast we drive our car, and it dictates our schedule as it alters our priorities. What time is it? Is more likely a question of anxiety than it is of curiosity. Isn't that true? How many of you have been under that pressure to perform under time constraints? I think everybody has. Then you've been on the clock. And the best way to beat it, preparation. And when I say preparation, today I'm going to take you behind the scenes of the NFL. And we're going to go through a week of preparation and planning for one game to call one play. And we're going to try to simulate the actual environment around calling a play. I think you'll enjoy it. I was a coach for the Denver Broncos for 8 years with Mike Shanahan. One of the most detailed and smart coaches in the entire NFL. Clock management was always at the front of his schedule every day. Every day, on and off the field, clock management. Every minute of every day of every week was mapped out to the nth detail. We had a digital clock in every one of our rooms. So you go through the whole building, there was a digital clock in every room. And they were all synchronized. There was no way that you could fake that the clock wasn't right because they were all on the same. He had a video camera in everybody's meeting room. So as a coach, whatever you were teaching, he knew about it. And he didn't hesitate to call you up to his office to say, hey, that's not what we're teaching. Workouts, off-season, in-season. He taped everything. And it was to measure effort, but it was also to protect against injury. Everything was watched. The practice and the drills during the season, every one of them were taped. It was your resume. Your effort was being evaluated every minute. How'd you like to have that? A normal week during the season. Your normal week during the season meant that there was a meeting at 9 o'clock every day, a 9 o'clock team meeting. If you weren't in your seat at 8:50, it was $1,000 a minute. out of your pocketbook. So in other words, if you were early, you were on time. That was it. 8:50. And I'll tell you what, there were a lot of guys that they had to pay. $1,000 a minute. Monday, you'd review the game that you just played. You'd make your corrections, you'd go through it, and then we would introduce the next opponent, and then we'd go out, run, lift, and stretch. Tuesday, the player's day off, voluntary mandatory film study. How about that one? And I'll tell you what, Mr. Peyton Manning is responsible for that one. But it's your job. And on Tuesday, the quarterback would sit down, and I know this on the offensive side of the ball, the quarterback would sit down with everybody and the skill positions, and he'd go through the previous game. He'd talk about what he wanted to see and how he would like things run. And then he would go through the team that you were going to play. And he'd start to make suggestions and talk to you about what you saw. So you had to actually identify on the screen what you saw to him. So he knew that you had an understanding of it. Then the quarterback never leaves the building. They get paid what they get paid because they're there 24/7. You'd be surprised. They are nonstop. And the next thing the quarterback he'd send all the skill players home. After he sends them home, then he'd sit down with the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach. And then they would have a meeting. And they'd start to build that game plan. Wednesday, your team meeting. Wednesday was the beginning of the week for everybody. That meant that was the start for the new opponent. You'd sit down and then you would watch tape. They'd give you your playbook. Your playbook was just a binder. And you'd fill that binder up. I mean, it had this many papers at the beginning of the week. At the end of the week, it had that many papers. All these drawings, everything. It was so detailed. They were all drawn out. And then after you had a meeting and you looked at, and what you see on your call sheet, all those categories, they are all broken down as film segments. So they are segments of film that you can watch to see and observe how your opponent might possibly play you. And that's how you build that game plan. You look at it, you break it down, and then you think, okay, maybe they will, maybe they won't. I mean, sometimes certain players don't play the way you think they should. Then you would have your walkthrough. After every morning meeting, you go out, you walk through everything, and you walk through things because there might be some detail that the coaches didn't think that you would be able to comprehend or to be able to play on the field. So we walk through things. After the walkthrough, you eat lunch, then you go out to practice, and then at the end of the day, when you're done the practice, you're watching tape again. It's just nonstop. Thursday, the same thing, except you're watching Wednesday's practice on Thursday. And then Friday, same thing. Thursday, you're watching Thursday's practice. And it's just a nonstop grind. You're watching tape as much as you can. You have to be a visual learner for the most part, I think. And I know that for me, I did not like to watch tape. I'd rather go out on the field. And most of the time I said, I got to beat that guy, and that's it. I'll beat him based on what this guy does. And really, it can be pretty simple, but you never know. Each practice always started with your individual, and then it goes to team. So you'd add more players all the way, and by the end of practice, you went from that individual drill to a team drill. So it was just keep adding them in and get everybody to work together, everybody do their assignment. Every practice was carded and scripted. There would be these 8.5 by 11 cards. They're just card stock. And the formation is drawn on it. And the coaches would have to draw the formation in. And the coach would also draw the defense on the other side of the ball. Everybody familiar with the term scout team? Scout team means that it was the second and third offense that would run the offense for the first defense. You'd go over there and you'd work against the first defense. the second and third defense would come over and work against the first offense. So you were always moving guys around the field. The guys that played scout team actually had to watch video, and they want to be on the team, and they know that anything that they do is going to be watched. But they also have to run what's on the card. And the coaches will draw, and they'll write just little notations up there, like to a particular guy. Make sure that you're 2 feet outside the tackle. Make sure that you play 7 yards off, 3 yards inside. And it's very detailed, but everything down to the nth. You simulate game conditions and you practice like you play. I mean, that was the Shanahan deal. You better practice like you play. You finish down the field, and and if you didn't, you're out. Now for the fun part. It's game time. What I want to talk you through is you look at your call sheet. That call sheet encapsulates 4 games. It would be the 4 games that your opponent had just played. Okay? It's thought through completely, 180 to 200 plays. Communication protocol. I'll talk to you about that. I'll start to get my stuff here. That's a fake ball. So, what happens? There is a period of time. There is a communication protocol that I want to talk you through. Every game, every play, you have coach and offensive coordinator up in the box. You have quarterback coach or whoever down on the sideline. And the box calls the play to the sideline. The sideline calls the play to the quarterback. You have 40 seconds after he winds the clock. So he places the ball, winds the clock, 40 seconds to get it snapped. After 25 seconds, the quarterback has a receiver in his helmet that the quarterback coach will talk to him. It's one-way communication. The quarterback can listen to it, but he can't respond. You have 25 seconds to get that play to the quarterback. After that, his helmet shuts off. How many of you have ever seen the quarterbacks? They'll go, well, it ran out. And they don't care. They have an NFL official who sits up there, and he's the one that turns it off. Okay? Protocol is from the spotter to the coordinator to the quarterback coach to the huddle. The spotter will tell him down and distance, left and right hash, plus and minus field. That means have you crossed the 50 or haven't you? And personnel group coming into the game. So there's a lot of information that has to pass between these people. I was that spotter at one point. When I was that spotter, I got yelled at a lot because you have to have it right now. He goes, is it 3rd and 1 or is it 3rd and 2? And you go, it's 3rd and 2, coach. Well, say it next time. It's tough. The other one you're going to watch out for is when Shanahan calls back up and he goes, what was that? That's always tough. So you got the 40 seconds, the 25 seconds. Now it's time to call the play. So you set the ball. You set the ball. You wind the clock. You got 40 seconds. The spotter is sitting there. The spotter's going, okay. You got 3rd and 7. Left hash, plus 38. They're sending in the nickel package. Nickel package. Offensive coordinator. He's looking at this. He's calling the play down to the sideline. Tiger. personnel group. Solo right, F left, 3-jet, U shallow cross. Quarterback coach, he's going to call the play to the quarterback. So now his card, he's not in the box, it comes up to here. And he goes 3-jet, U shallow cross. The quarterback then so the quarterback, now he's got the signal. He's okay in that. He comes into the huddle and he goes solo right, F left, 3-jet, U shallow cross. On black, break. So they come up to the line of scrimmage. Ooh, that would have been a long one. Come up to the line of scrimmage. The quarterback is looking, and this is Peyton Manning. I mean, he did this every game. He got up here, and then he'd step back. He'd look. He'd go, Omaha, Omaha. Omaha in this case means the play is on. We're going to keep it on. Now he comes up here, and he's going to go, take it to 55, take it to 55. Meaning that he has selected number 55 on the defensive side so that everybody can make their calls based upon who he picks. Too complicated to explain why he picks 55. A lot of guys use different ways, but that's what they're doing. And everything, whether it's a pass, whether it's a run, it's all based on 55 being the guy. How many, and it's a player count. So he comes up to the line and he says, take it to 55. And then he steps back, and the center, you guys would love this, the center's down here like this, and he's usually the guy. The center is the brains of the offense, besides the quarterback. And the center's down here, and he's looking at it, and he's hitting him. He's going, yo, you got him out here. You take it out there. You take it out there. You guys double down. Hey, over here. We got him. Let's go. Let's go up on the second level. Let's take it over there. And it's all just like a bunch of chickens, just back and forth. It's changing every minute. And it's changing, and it's changing. And then finally, quarterback steps back. And he looks at it. And he sees that he's going to have a guy out here that's open. He looks at his running back and he says, get over here. Take it out there to number 22. Number 22. The running back's looking at him. The quarterback's looking at everything. Plays up. He's just kind of playing with him. Tells the tight end to go in motion. Tight end comes across. Height. Snap the ball. All of that transpires in that 40 seconds or less. Sometimes they change it. Sometimes it's different. But the bottom line is, for the most part, everybody working together, are you prepared to snap your ball? I would tell you that's the end, but got one more story I want to tell you. It's kind of it's a kicker, and I think you like it. I want to finish with something that kind of resonates a little bit. Successful people are not lucky. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. My dad taught me something when I was a kid, just growing up. My dad taught me, when you're not on the field, stand behind the coach. And his thinking was, if you stand behind the coach, you're going to get seen, he'll put you in the game, and you'll get an opportunity. Well, my first 2 years in the league, I hardly ever got in the game. I was doing all the right things. I was training, but I never got an opportunity. We were playing the Oakland Raiders. It was the beginning of my third season. We were playing at the old Mile High Stadium. It was one of those crisp, sunny days, season opener, playing the Raiders. Man, I'm telling you, the crowd was rocking that old Mile High Stadium on its rollers. And if you've ever been in that at that time, that was quite a scene. Our Orange Crush defense had just stopped the Raiders. The Raiders sent their punter, Ray Guy, into the game, the great Ray Guy. Ray Guy is going to be kicking to our Rick Up Church, Tadpole, appropriately nicknamed. Ray Guy booms one. He outkicks the coverage. Rick gets the ball. He makes the first one miss, the second one miss, and like on a dime, Tadpole is up the field. He's coming towards us. I'm standing behind Coach Reeves. I'm watching. Rick's coming towards us. I'm like, oh boy. And he runs by. And you could see this element of pain on his face. I knew he was hurt. Antonopoulos and all the trainers converged on Tadpole. They're all checking him out. Dan Reeves wheels around and he brushes me back because I'm standing right behind him, like my dad told me to. And I remember he's looking at me, and he looks me in the eye, and then he looks over one shoulder, then the other, and then he starts looking up and down the sideline, like he hasn't found what he's looking for yet. And I'm sitting there going, I'm the third receiver. Rick's hurt. I probably need to go in the game. And I remember he turns back and he looks at me with a look of disappointment and a sound of disgust. He blurts out, "Get in there," with a gesture that said, "I can't believe I got to put you in the game." These things are indelible in your mind. They create that mindset. They give you a reason to get up every day when you're always fighting against the odds. That year, I made the Pro Bowl, and I led the NFL in touchdown receptions, and for the next 6 years, never came off the field. And it was because of all those things that I did to prepare. That's when it's your shot and you get that one opportunity. Are you ready? Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey.
All right. We ready for pickup game? Let's clear out these tables. We got this. Again, thank you, Steve. Everybody, thank you for coming out. Please drive safe.
Anybody got questions?
And by the way, we have pictures with Steve over in the corner if you want to take some photos. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, I thought he said something about question and answer or something.
Was there a Q&A?
That's all right.
We were running over time.
Okay.